Good afternoon, everyone. It being February 16th, I will call to order the Senate Housing and Homelessness Prevention Committee to order. So we will be hearing 3 bills today, all of which will be laid over. The first item on the agenda is Senate File 556. Senator Dibble, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
To your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate File number 556. Let me also take the opportunity to thank my co-authors, Senator Port, Senator Mohamed, Senator Seeberger, and Senator Gustafson. Madam Chair and members, what Senate File 556 would seek to do would be to simply prohibit landlords from requiring potential tenants and existing tenants to declaw or their cats or debark their dogs. Members, one of the most common reasons for housing instability is when folks are forced to surrender their pets to shelter or to rescue. And one of the most misguided requirements that occasionally pop up in rental requirements, lease agreements, and the like are these provisions. This bill came to me, Madam Chair, lest you think this doesn't happen and it seems unusual. It may not be that common, but it does happen. And it came to me actually through a constituent who was actually given the choice of either giving up his cat or having his cat declawed in exchange for accepting the terms of a lease for an apartment that he was looking to rent. Madam Chair, the reason we think this bill is a good idea is because it is both unnecessary and also causes great harm to the animals. Declawing is a misnomer. It's not simply taking the claws off of a cat. It actually involves removing the end of the cat's digit. It's very painful and has substantial physical and behavioral issues. Likewise, devocalization or debarking is a procedure where the vocal cords of an animal are cut in an attempt to make the animal quieter, also painful, also leads to behavioral issues when the animal can't use their typical communication options. It is an extreme solution to a problem that doesn't really exist. Of course, we know that the issue around a dog's behavior can be addressed through other means. And the issue around a cat potentially causing damage through cat scratching, which is normal behavior, really isn't an issue for the dwelling itself, but it would be more of an issue for the owner's own property furniture, to be more specific. But every cat owner knows that there are ways of directing and redirecting cats to exhibit this behavior in a better manner. Madam Chair, likewise, if dogs and cats are treated in this fashion, I'm not going to use pejorative words necessarily, but I'm tempted to. It creates behavioral problems that could create even worse consequences for these properties. And it really is an attempt for us to address issues of housing access, housing security, housing stability. People should not be put in a position of losing their companion animals in exchange for housing, particularly when they're housed precariously. I would just draw your attention to some of the letters from the Humane Society and a large coalition of organizations that articulate the arguments and can make the link between housing issues and how we treat these companion animals. With that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to stand for questions, walk through the bill in more detail if there's interest in that, or refer to my testifiers who would like to speak in favor of Senate File 556.
I think Senator Dibble, what I would like to do is have your testifiers go next, and then we'll have some discussion and questions afterwards. I also will just note for the record that we do have a quorum. So we will start with Carrie D'Amato. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair Bolden, and the committee. My name is Carrie D'Amato. I'm the Executive Director of Pet Haven. We are Minnesota's oldest and first foster-based rescue, having started in 1952. So we have 70 years on the animal welfare landscape. Not only am I Executive Director of Pet Haven, I'm also a feline behavior consultant, and my specialty is feline feng shui, which is harmonious households for multi-cat owners, and litter box aversion issues. I like to call them PCATs, and they're some of my favorite, I have to be honest. I really love the work I do. I'm helping felines and their owners stay together through identifying problems and providing solutions for these challenges. I have 20 years plus in the field, and I have the proof of cat hair on my clothing to show you. But today I'm here to speak about it as an expert, to speak about the issues we see at Pet Haven and in my private practice surrounding the decline of cats. As you've been informed, decline of cats is an amputation of the finger that often leaves cats with residual pain and medical issues such as paw pain, back pain, infection, tissue necrosis, and lameness. Removing claws changes the way the cat's foot meets the ground, and it can cause pain like wearing a very uncomfortable pair of shoes you can just never take off. Improperly removed claws can regrow, causing nerve damage and bone spurs that are extremely painful. Cats who are declawed often avoid the litter box as it's painful to step on many types of litter. They also have the tendency to bite more often due to pain spikes and not having claws to defend. Many of these cats need to be on pain medication to mitigate the avoidance of the litter box and the bite tendencies. Oftentimes, these cats enter the shelters and are euthanized. At Pet Haven, we see many applications to surrender cats who have litter box aversion issues. 53% of our applications to surrender a cat are due to litter box aversions. In 2022, we received 1,543 applications to surrender a family cat. 663 of these applications were due to litter box aversion. Of that 663 cats, 427 were declawed. We were able to help many stay with their family through pain management and litter box changes. 42 countries do not allow declawing of cats, and 2 states have now made it completely illegal. At Pet Haven, we do have a no declaw policy and require our adopters to sign a contract stating they will not declaw. Our 16 vet partners support our decision, and they also do not declaw cats at their clinics. I believe that this bill is an important step in recognizing the importance of humane treatment of pets. I hope that you consider and see the impact to reduce suffering this bill can have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. D'Amato. And next, we'll hear from Zach Eichten. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Bolden, members of the committee. My name is Zach Eichten. I'm the Minnesota State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. Ms. D'Amato and Senator Dibble have already stated a lot about what the bill is about. So just to really quickly just look at the impact, the number one thing that we're trying to do is protect pets and property. The unintended consequences of these procedures include the actual injury to the animals involved, but also leads to worse condition for the property in the long term with litter box avoidance, as you've heard. And then the number one issue with redirected behaviors and frustration with dogs when this rare practice is enacted is destructive behavior towards property and aggression towards people. To keep pets and people and property safe, we respectfully urge you to support Senate File 556, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eichten. Senator Dibble, any further comments before we move to questions or discussion?
No, Madam Chair, I would say that it's important to know that the AKC also supports this legislation, and the multifamily housing, Minnesota Multi-Housing Association is silent on the matter. We've had conversations with them, so.
Thank you. All right, members, questions, discussion? Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill forward. My question is, the intent of this, is it to have it in all types of rentals, including owner-occupied?
Senator Dibble.
That's a good question, and I would have to look more closely at that. A central point which should be made before I forget, and it might also be responsive to your question, Senator Draheim, is that this does not prevent a landlord to simply disallow cats or disallow dogs entirely. So it's in those instances where dogs and cats are allowed to live on the premises that they can't then be required to be either debarked or declawed.
Senator Draheim.
I guess, thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, the owner-occupied part, is that your intent to include all types of rental?
Senator Dibble.
Madam Chair, Senator Draheim, I hadn't thought about that. What I thought about is the more traditional setting where someone is renting a house or an apartment, and not a room, or, I think sometimes the other half of the duplex is considered owner-occupied. So I would have to think about it a little bit harder and not try to make something up on the fly. Mr. Eichten has a response, I think.
Yeah,
Mr.
and if I could, Chair,
Senator Draheim.
just a question, I don't have any other questions or statements. I just think it's something we should think about as it moves forward. Thank you.
Chair Bolden.
Mr. Eichten.
Senator Draheim, as well as I'd like to point you to subdivision 2 on just what the prohibitions are saying, and it's advertising the availability of a real property for occupancy in a manner designed to discourage application for occupancy because an applicant's animal has not been declawed or devocalized, or refused to allow the occupancy because of that person's refusal. So I don't believe that it would cover exactly necessarily what you're asking of, like owner occupied. Like what we're trying to do with the intent of this bill is that a landlord wouldn't be able to require any tenant to have this procedure, but we would say that that procedure should only be done when medically necessary. And that's not the decision of the landlord. That would be in consultation with the vet. So an owner, for instance, of a unit that's an owner-occupied housing, or a tenant would be able to proceed with that procedure if they initiate it, but it wouldn't be a requirement of tenancy.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you. And I don't have a problem with the premise of the bill. I'm just, in a lot of cases, owner-occupied have different rules than normal, I think the traditional rental that Senator Dibble talked about. And I just think it's something we should look at moving forward if we're going to move on with this concept, is maybe exempt them because they're normally not experts in state statute or have experience. But I don't think there's probably a ton of cases for owner-occupied versus rental management companies. But just my 2 cents, Senator Dibble, I appreciate you bringing the bill forward.
So, Madam Chair, I would, if I
Senator
could just
Dibble.
respond, I think I would welcome the conversation. I understand, owner-occupied is different than, renting out a room in someone's home is a qualitatively different undertaking than, offering an apartment or a separate unit for rent. So yeah, let's have more conversation. Thank you.
Senator Housley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Dibble. Is there any concern that this bill may push landlords to just simply not allow pets in their building and due to concerns about noise or damage to the property? Did you hear from any landlords to that effect?
Senator Dibble.
Madam Chair, Senator Housley, that actually is not a concern, interestingly, in our conversations with the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. They didn't think that this would cause a lot of landlords who would otherwise allow animals on their property. So I guess the long-winded point I'm making is, the short version of the long-winded point I'm making is, this is fairly unusual for this sort of thing to be required. It does happen, and so it is a problem to be solved. It's admittedly somewhat rare, And so if a landlord is so concerned about something that they shouldn't be concerned about, and we hope to replace bad information with good, also there's going to be, kind of a public education component of all of this as we enact law and help landlords understand that they really don't have much to worry about. If cats have claws and dogs can bark, then they should just disallow animals from their property in those instances, if they're really concerned they can't be persuaded otherwise.
Senator Housley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if the testifier had something else to add, but if it's really rare, and maybe you said it earlier and I missed it because I came in late, but how often does a landlord request that? Is it common? It's not very common, I hear, but yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Acton?
Chair Bolden, Senator Housley, thanks for the question. It is not a very common practice for all the reasons stated about the sort of worst property outcomes for this. Most landlords are already not doing this, but there are some holdouts that still see it as a necessary thing, especially devocalization is an extremely rare case. It's just under the current statute, technically, a landlord could require that. So some of our partners that we were working on language with recommended we include that portion of it. And then as far as the sort of to your previous questions on declawing of cats, there are ways to have like soft nail caps over a cat's claws that you can put on that reduce that. So part of what Senator Dibble is referring to when we're enacting these laws is to make sure that we're communicating there are humane alternatives to still keep property damage to a minimum from the scratching, but also most of the property that would be damaged, like almost all of it, is the property of the pet owner, like furniture. So it's pretty rare that we see it, but there are definitely some holdouts from landlords who still have the sort of misinformation from the past of using declaw as a reason to have pets but keep damage to a minimum. There's just new information now that we want to take care of the practice.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other discussion, questions, members? Seeing none, Senate File 556 will be laid over for further consideration. Thank you, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Moving on, members, the second item on our agenda is Senate File 371, Senator Pa. All right, Senator Pa, please proceed. And I understand you have an author's amendment, is that correct?
I do.
Would you like to offer that
mic is on?
first?
Okay. Thank you. I've got an author's amendment A2. I believe that's been passed out to all of you. Hello, Chair Bolden and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today about my bill, which improves access to affordable rental housing for low-income pet owners. And I want to just say Senator Draham said to me he was going to ask me like 20 questions, so I appreciate that he won't. Today I'm going to talk about a bill in which I feel very passionate about. In Minnesota, a significant percentage of our low-income renters are cost burdened, and tens of thousands of households are behind on their rents. But families throughout the state of Minnesota are experiencing housing shortages, and especially housing that allows pets. A lot of our housing have inflexible pet policies and restrictions, and that has made it really tough for families, especially people who own pets. Many properties have pet policies that include restrictions on breed and weight, and effectively eliminating a large percentage of family dogs from living in most rental units. In addition to those physical restrictions, high fees associated with having a pet in your home can also present additional challenges for families. So this essentially makes it really difficult for people who cannot afford these extra high costs. It makes it difficult for them, which means that only people of certain means can own pets and others of lower income cannot. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to present this bill, which improves the access to affordable rental housing for Minnesota's low-income pet owners by expanding our pet inclusive policies for specifically housing that are financed by the Housing Finance Agency. So this would not apply to private landlord or a private owner properties, and it would not apply to rental units that are not financed by the Housing Finance Agency or units that have been previously financed. This would be for new development that are using funds from the Housing Finance Agency. So I just want to make that really clear as to which properties we're discussing this language to and which ones don't apply for this new language. So this would be effective January 1st of 2024 if passed. And I've got a few testifiers as well that's here with me today.
Thank you, Senator Pott. Before we get to testifiers, would you like to move the A2 amendment?
Yes, please.
Any questions about the amendment, members? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the motion passes and the amendment is adopted. All right, moving to testifiers then. First, we will hear from Carrie D'Amato. After that, Shannon Glenn. Ms. D'Amato, please introduce yourself again for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Carrie D'Amato, and I'm the Executive Director for Pet Haven, Minnesota's first and oldest foster-based rescue. Pet Haven has been in our community for 70 years and changing lives since 1952. I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today about housing insecurity and how it affects people in crisis and their family members, their pets. Animal welfare is a highly emotional topic, and it can be hard to distinguish between what we believe and what we know. Today, I'll be talking about data and facts as they relate to what I have experienced the last 4 years surrounding housing insecurity in pets. Our organization, Pet Haven, has seen a lot of changes in animal welfare and the needs of the community, but a lot has also stayed the same. People and pets still need help, and that need for help is more than we have ever seen before. There are approximately 3.6 million people in the Twin Cities, and based on calculations derived from the Census Household Pulse Survey as of December 2022, for the 7 counties, there are an estimated 30,670 households at risk of housing insecurity. A national study conducted by Maddie's Fund found 65% of households across the nation have pets, averaging about 2.2 pets per household. So for the Twin Cities, this would mean that 43,856 pets were potentially at risk of homelessness in December of last year. It's an alarming number. At Pet Haven, this number does not surprise us. As part of our service to the community, we offer a crisis owner surrender program. This is not a temporary foster program. This is a permanent surrender, and it's never an easy decision for people to make. I personally process many of these surrenders, and I can tell you tears are shed, and people are so gracious and appreciative of the service that we provide, providing their family member a safe place to land. This program is also extremely valuable because it not only helps people and pets in crisis, it also keeps pets out of the sheltering system, leaving space for the ones who truly need to be there, strays and emergency situations. Many of these pets that came to us did not need to. We have seen a dramatic uptick in the need for people to surrender their pets as a direct result of housing insecurity. In 2019, we had a total of 286 surrender applications come in. We've brought 58 pets into our program. In 2022, just 4 years later, we had a total of 2,489 surrender applications. 457 pets came into our program. Of the applications that were submitted between 2019 and 2022, 2022, there were 5,442 applications. 43% of these applications submitted were the direct result of housing insecurity. That was 2,340 applications. Of that, 21% lost housing and were currently homeless, leaving 492 pets at risk. 79% of that were at risk within the next 1 to 2 months. That was 1,848 pets at risk. 87% of these applications experiencing housing insecurity noted no longer can afford the rent and cannot find affordable housing with pets. Unable to find affordable housing with pets that will allow them to keep their family together. Imagine having to split up your family. It's heartbreaking. I see and feel this heartbreak on a weekly basis, and I wonder what happened to all the ones we couldn't help. I believe this bill will help keep families together, and I ask for your consideration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. D'Amato. Next, we'll hear from Shannon Glenn. After that, we'll move to our virtual testifiers with Eliza Johnson. Ms. Glenn, please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Shannon Glenn, and I'm the executive director of My Pit Bull's Family, and I use she, her pronouns. Our mission is to keep families together by advancing dog-inclusive rental and insurance policies and providing essential pet retention programming. While I give this testimony, I want to recognize the privilege that I have of owning my own home, where my 2 pit bull type dogs that both weigh over 70 pounds are likely snuggled up with and snoring with their 10-pound Havapoo dog sister and my cat, who of course thinks he's a dog. I recognize that homeownership is not an option for everyone, meaning that affordable pet-friendly rentals without breed or size or weight restrictions are extremely critical for pet-loving families. In addition to running this organization, I have a professional background in human services with experience as a shelter advocate, housing case manager, and managing the only pet-friendly homeless shelter in the state of Minnesota. I have been a tireless advocate for those that not only have pets, but that are also experiencing housing instability, a lack of resources, and various obstacles to securing affordable housing in Minnesota. I can tell you firsthand that searching for housing with someone with various barriers to housing on top of having pets can be a nearly impossible task. And this is why it's so important for housing providers working with our most vulnerable populations to allow pets, regardless of breed or size. The companionship of a pet for someone experiencing and living through trauma can truly be life-saving. I'm here today in support of this bill on behalf of families who face discrimination every day. Our organization also operates the nation's largest dog-inclusive rental database that showcases affordable and free market apartments that accept all dogs, regardless of perceived breed or size. Our research has shown that there are over 25 types of dogs that are commonly discriminated against, in addition to lower weight restrictions that eliminate the opportunity for large breed dogs to live in rentals. Between 2018 and today, we have received over 4,000 emails from families desperate to find housing that accept their entire family, including the family dog. 250 of those households searching for housing were in Minneapolis. Each day, families are faced with the tough choice of surrendering their family pet or struggling to find housing that will accept them with open arms. According to data from Minneapolis Animal Care and Control, housing and landlord issues are the top reasons for owner surrenders, most frequently impacting families with large breed dogs. I believe that this bill is a start to ending discrimination against pet owners in the state of Minnesota. Through ending pet discrimination based solely on breed, weight, or size, in multi-unit dwellings, families will have more options available to them when searching for a place to call home, specifically our lower income families and families of color. Of those 250 families that contacted us looking for housing in Minnesota, the average max price for a rental they could afford was $1,150 per month, with many families searching for a rental that will accept pets between $500 and $800 per month. Our national rental research dashboard shows that there's a total of 293 rentals that we've collected data on in the state of Minnesota, of pet-friendly rentals, with the majority of listings in the Twin Cities area. 273 of those rentals have discriminatory pet policies, meaning that they have breed, weight, or size restrictions, and only 19 of those rentals are inclusive to all dogs. Our Minnesota rental research trends shows that the average pet rent per month is $40 per pet, and the average pet fees, including non-refundable deposits, is $258. Our support of this bill is to allow our most vulnerable populations to have equitable access to pet ownerships and to reduce the number of relinquishments to local shelter and rescue organizations. We also operate the North Minneapolis Pet Resource Center, where we work predominantly with families that have incomes of less than $40,000 a year, with nearly 75% of them also receiving at least one public benefit. These families are always concerned about housing instability, and that is also a conversation that we're constantly having to find housing for them and their pets. We know that the opposition is concerned about damage or nuisances that can be caused by pets while living in a rental. It's important to note that under the provisions of this bill, property management will still be permitted to regulate pet behavior and take steps to protect their residents from dangerous and ill-behaving animals, and allow for situation-based pet policies to hold owners accountable for any damages caused. This bill will also allow for landlords to require renters' liability insurance. Not only is requiring renters' insurance, frankly, a good business practice for all, regardless of pets or not, it also allows for pet owners to be held liable if a dog bite or incident were to happen on the property. This common sense legislation will put the focus where it belongs, on the behavior of the individual pet and the responsibility of owners. On behalf of families across the state, and of course the country, who are searching for a place to call home with their family pet, I thank you for your time and consideration of this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Glenn. Next, we'll move to virtual testifiers. First, Eliza Johnson, and then Julie Wall. Ms. Johnson, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself and introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, and thank you, Chair Bolden and members of the committee. Good afternoon. My name is Elisa Johnson. I'm the Executive Director and Director of Investigations for Minnesota Federated Humane Societies. I've been asked today to testify in support of Pet Inclusive Housing Bill, Senate File 371. MFHS has unique and essential powers and duties under Minnesota State Statute 34301 and 34306. An important part of the services we provide is to assist law enforcement and to investigate animal welfare violations throughout all 87 counties of Minnesota. Several cases throughout the year involve reports of domestic violence. We feel it is crucial for victims of domestic violence, their children and pets, to have stable and affordable housing options and the ability to keep their loved ones together through what is a very scary time in their lives. Victims feel even further victimized when they finally are brave enough to seek help and get out of an abusive environment, but cannot locate affordable housing that will also allow them to keep their beloved pets with them. These situations are heartbreaking. We do not want victims of abuse to remain in an abusive environment simply because they cannot find affordable housing for them and their pets. The ability for people and their pets to remain together is crucial. Not only do we feel is beneficial to their recovery, but it helps to keep animals who are loved and cared for by their families with them, out of danger and out of shelters. This bill helps to keep families together. It's a win-win for people and pets all throughout our great state. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next, we'll hear from Julie Wall. Please unmute yourself and turn on your camera and introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Julie Wall. I'm a landlord from Rochester, Minnesota. I oppose Senate File 371 for the safety of public housing. Would you impose this type of bill on private landlords to accept all dog breeds? You would get a big pushback if you did. I think public housing landlords are an easy target because they are not well represented. I used to allow pets until the flea infestation. My tenant told me they had a flea problem from their cat and that she has been bitten over 30 times by fleas. I did a bug bomb for the apartment and I was in disbelief at what I was seeing. All the windows were black from dead fleas trying to escape out the window. One flea can produce 2,000 eggs in 3 months. Flea infestations can get out of hand really fast at apartment complexes. HSUS and ASPCA are unfairly blaming landlords for animals being surrendered to shelters. And I forward you a study from 2021 that the #1 reason for returning dogs to the shelter is behavior. Problem dogs do not belong at apartment complexes. These groups are chipping away at the law to eventually make it mandatory that landlords like me have to accept all dog breeds. I like to see that, so far I haven't seen this. I'd like to see the evidence and the numbers of Minnesota public housing tenants who have been turned away because of having a certain type. I have seen no evidence of that. And this bill should not be considered without those numbers. I looked up the reasons why HUD applications might be declined, and pet choice is not even mentioned as a problem. It's family eligibility, income limit, student status, and citizenship. And again, HUD has no problems with landlords regulating pets by size or type. And HUD has no problem with landlords charging a pet deposit or pet rent. The safety of public housing tenants is going to be compromised by this bill. These high liability problems will occur with dogs at elevators, narrow hallways, and common areas with large dogs lunging at people and other dogs. And dog fights will occur. We will see more dog-on-dog fights in these common areas. Tenants also will let their dogs urinate and poop in the hallways and elevators, making the common areas unsanitary. How about the tenants who are allergic to pets? So far, there hasn't been any consideration to them. And the Minnesota Housing Financing Agency is setting themselves up to be sued. Landlords should be able to charge pet rent. There is more work involved in keeping common areas clean from pet hair. We know there's going to be more urine and feces damage in common areas, meaning flooring replacement will happen more often. Dog urine ruins landscaping, and that will cost more to maintain. And I would think that tenants who are on rental assistance have a tight budget to follow. Pets are expensive to keep up with. There's vet care, mandatory rabies shots, flea prevention medicine if they're being a good owner of the pet, licensing, renter's insurance, and food. And according to My Rover, the dog people, it costs the average pet owner between $1,000 to $4,000 a year to keep their pet. I do not understand why MHFA thinks it needs to subsidize pet ownership over safe, affordable housing. And the other thing, landlords can be held liable for dog bites that happen in the common areas. And the likely consequences of this bill will be that landlords will withdraw from the public housing market because of too much risk and liability, and it will hurt their livelihood. And as we all know, there's already a shortage of public housing. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Wall. Senator Pa, any other comments before we move to questions and discussion?
We've seen the burden that pet restrictive policies place on our communities. And if we want to protect people, we must also protect the pets that they love. And I truly believe that it's unfair that people of lower income cannot have the ability to have a pet live with them, which is a member of their family, because of some of the high costs that are associated with monthly fees and deposits when you have a pet. Again, this policy does not apply to privately owned property. It is simply applying to any new development of rental units that are having funding from our Minnesota, our Housing Finance Agency. So this would apply in 2024 and beyond. We need more housing that are pet friendly, that have less restrictive pet policies. And I hope that you will vote for this, or that we'll lay it over for consideration.
Senator Lucero?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I have a series of questions, but I'll start with I am an animal lover. I love dogs. Absolutely. I have 2 dogs myself. And I think, in fact, I haven't come across a person that doesn't like dogs. Cats, on the other hand, we know they're from the devil. Would you be willing to accept an amendment to, just kidding. Not on the devil part, on the amendment part. The first question I have is on line 1.17, you just referenced it actually in the remarks there, applying to housing developments. Can you define what a development is? And what I'm envisioning is a building that's on a lot that perhaps they're performing an expansion on the same PID, not a new PID, the same PID, another building, or maybe in addition onto an existing building. Would that then mean that the whole, even the existing part, not the addition part, would now be subject to the requirements?
Senator Pah.
Yes, I would say so, right?
Mr. Acton.
Chair Bolden, Senator Lucero, for the record, again, I'm Zach Eichten with the Humane Society of the United States, the Minnesota State Director. My understanding based on the reading of this language with line 1.7 through 1.9 here is that it's housing that is constructed or acquired on or after the date. So based on my reading of this, the existing units wouldn't be impacted, but if you were making an addition that is using like housing infrastructure bonds, those would be subject to this, but the existing units wouldn't be. It's just the part of the housing that is financed or developed by after the start date.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Thank you for verifying that.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so just for the record then, if I understood the answer correctly, if let's hypothetically, there's 50 units that exist and 25 units is being added on to an existing 50, so you have 75 units total, the 25 would then have to allow pets, but the 50 wouldn't, even though they might all still be the same building, common areas, hallways, et cetera. I mean, that's getting, let me ask the next question, then you could answer if you want to do that. The next thing is, I'm always concerned when I see the word common, like on line 1.10, common household pets, or when I see the word reasonable on 1.12, subject to reasonable conditions, again, reasonable on 1.14, reasonable conditions. 1.19, the weight of a pet is not a reasonable, so reasonable is a very subjective term. And I know this bill's being laid over, but I would hope that we could take a look at that. So let me talk about common household pets. So I do see that you have a definition of common household pet on the back. So I'm looking at that, and it says a domesticated animal, such as. Well, the word such as means this is not an exhaustive list. These are just some examples. Some examples include dog, cat, bird, rodent, fish, turtle. But there are certainly other domesticated animals. I grew up with somebody who had a snake as a friend. I know somebody right now, in fact, I suspect there might be many people that probably know her. She's an activist, and unfortunately, Taylor Swine just passed away, but Taylor Swine was in many different parades over a decade plus, and was living in the house, would sleep on the couch. And then rabbits, rabbits are similar to cats, they're in, but it's not on that list, and I know there's others. So I'm concerned with, again, the definition is very loose when I see the word such as. So I guess these aren't questions, these are more just comments. Let's see here. It speaks on line 1.19, a prohibition on the breed of a common household pet or limitation on the weight, et cetera, is not a reasonable condition. So my rental properties are single-family homes, and my insurance company has told me, Eric, there are breeds of dog out there that we exclude from insurance. If you have them and something happens, dog bite, whatever, they're not covered. Under this language, that it appears would not be a reasonable condition. And so I'm looking up what are some of the, I just quickly looked up what are some of the breeds that insurance companies are commonly prohibiting. Doberman Pinscher, Pit Bull, Rottweiler, and then I don't know why you would have this, but wolf dogs. Apparently there is a breed out there where someone takes a wolf and breeds it with any other breed. It's half wolf something. I don't want a half wolf dog. I don't want to be a landlord that is now mandated to have a half wolf in my units, especially if my insurance company is not going to cover the liability. And I believe, didn't you have, is it in here that you can't mandate insurance? I'm looking to see if that is, it looks like it might be, so I'll ask that question. Can we mandate insurance?
Senator Pa.
Thank you, Senator Lucero. We are leaving that to the specific owners to choose whether or not they require insurance, and we're not mandating. So we're leaving that to people to say, do they want to require insurance from their renters, which would cover their pets, or not?
Senator Lucero.
Thank you. Okay, so then under the scenario where if I can't prohibit per 1.19, a prohibition on breed is not a reasonable condition. So if I can't prohibit the breed, but insurance companies aren't covering certain breeds, and I have an applicant that wants a breed that is not covered, even if I mandate insurance, I'm now going to, as a landlord, going to be required to accept a breed that there is no insurance policy that covers them. Where does that liability fall?
Chair Bolden.
Mr. Acton.
Senator Lucero, thanks for the question. Just on that insurance question, currently there's a lot of data out there around breed bans and breed-specific language. In Minnesota, State Farm insurance doesn't require any sort of coverage that's related to breed bans or not. They're breed neutral on the type of dog a person owns. So there are options. And State Farm has I believe, about 25% of the market share here in Minnesota for insurance.
Mr. Drahan.
Can I comment? I'm sorry to interrupt, but, not all insurance companies write paper for multifamily. And the list of insurers that write for multifamily is shrinking every year. And I think your data is going to the greater residents or our houses. But it's different for multifamily. And there's not a lot of insurance companies so sorry to interject, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to make sure all the committee members understood that.
Mr. Acton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Durham. And I'm gonna let Shannon speak on that too. Actually, I'll turn it over to her.
Beautiful. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator. So in terms of insurance, there are quite a few insurance companies that do offer rental policies for renters, one being State Farm, but there are an amplitude of others as well. In terms of insurance, we also have a bill to talk about homeowners insurance and removing breed and mate restrictions within that as well. So it is something that we are aware of and are working on in order to make sure that we can keep people and pets together.
Senator Drahan. And then I'll go back to Senator Lucero.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that having had quite a few rentals over the years, the insurance is one of the most challenging pieces is to find insurance to cover the property. But I support this bill. I do think, Senator Paul, that it does need some tweaking, and I think Senator Lucero brings up some really good points on the vagueness of some of the areas, and I look forward to working with you on that. But if I could just go in another direction real quick and ask if the agency keeps track of people denied access to a unit due to a pet, because this is mainly focused on financed property from the state. And I'm sure Dan never thought he would have to answer a question like this, but.
Mr. Kitzberger, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Madam Chair, members, I'm Dan Kitzberger. I'm the Legislative Director at Minnesota Housing. Senator Draheim, you're right. However, I did check in with our multifamily compliance staff for both properties in our portfolio and then for the contracts we manage. And this just doesn't typically surface as an issue. And so I guess to answer your question, no, we don't track that currently.
Senator Drahan.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then to my last concern is on line 1.2, 2-0. It's the prohibition on one-time, non-refundable or monthly fees. I think the testifier, two testifiers back, I think, brought this up, that there clearly is, there is an issue with potential additional maintenance required. And so right now, I charge a one-time, non-refundable pet fee if you want to bring a pet in, because even if there's no scratches, if there's other things, many times there might be just an odor, and that odor has to be dealt with. So if I can't charge a fee one time, or I can't do it monthly, I have an issue with that. And so if you could, I'll just, before I throw it to you, there's that, and then what was the other item here? Oh, it was in regards to, weird, I can't find it right offhand here, but it was reasonable conditions. So one of the conditions I don't have in here, or you don't have in here, is just waste cleanup, so pet feces. So I have a provision in my leases that say tenants, they have to clean up the feces in the backyard or wherever on a weekly basis, and if they don't, I'm going to charge a fee if I have to come and do it, but I don't see that in the list here, because that's, again, I'm not inherently opposed to the bill, but I think there's a lot of work that does need to be done to it. So those two items can throw back to them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator
Senator Pa.
Lucero. I'm going to have him speak, and then I'll comment to that as well.
Mr. Acton.
Chair Bolden and Senator Lucero, thank you for bringing those up. So number one, to the pet feces and pet cleanup, in the reasonable conditions allowed on line 1.15, 1.14 and 1.15, reasonable conditions on pet maintenance or ownership include but are not limited to. That would be something that you would, as a landlord, be able to include in your list of reasonable conditions, that a pet owner would be, you would have to clean up after your pet. The pet maintenance is an important factor for keeping the property up to snuff, essentially, and that would be one of the things that a landlord would be able to apply. The reason why we have, I would use your word, a little bit of vagueness in here, is so that we can allow individual landlords and property management companies to have some say over the way that it is structured. We didn't want to be overly prescriptive when we were writing this initial draft. However, I hear the concerns, and would be happy to work with you on tightening it up if you want to be a little bit more prescriptive. I think that would be something that we're certainly open to. And then on line 1.20 and 1.21 on the refundable or fees, we would actually encourage landlords to charge a refundable pet deposit, just due to the type of housing we're trying to target here, where it's for folks with low incomes who are exiting homelessness or housing instability, that it be refundable. So in the case that there is no pet damage, we're able to give that money back at the end of a lease agreement, so that folks who are already experiencing maybe lower incomes know that that's coming back if they're able to keep the property in good condition, which would hopefully promote responsible pet ownership as well, knowing that money is refundable and will come back if it's in good condition at the end of a lease agreement. So that's why it's the non-refundable fees. We want to make sure we're not doing that just because of the type of housing, but we would encourage a refundable fee for the maintenance, as you mentioned.
Senator Pa, additional comments?
Yeah, I just want to address that again. So I agree with everything he said, and I just want to address that specifically again. This is being targeted with units that are being built that are using grants and funds from our housing agency. And so if they're receiving those things and targeted towards low-income renters, that this is a market of people who need affordable housing and they have pets. And so what we're asking them to do is to not charge the monthly fee, because $40 a month to people who can't afford it, it's a burden. It eliminates housing options that already has a shortage of affordable housing options for them. So again, this is not for private properties that are owned by people, or properties that did not receive any grants or funding through our housing agency. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And my last just remark I would submit is, so I've been here for 9 years, and so let's just say this becomes law. I've been in the legislature for 9 years. If this becomes law, it'll be 2 years from now that somebody will come in with a proposed bill that'll just insert, or they'll maybe delete financed from the agency. And then all of a sudden applies to everybody. And so what I'm concerned about is incrementalism here. And so I'm just thinking 2 steps down the road here, what's going to happen? And we definitely need to get this tightened up if this becomes law and allow for that because it's just, again, that's just the nature of the legislature. It continues to incrementally expand its scope and include additional people. So thank you.
Other questions, members? All right, seeing none, this bill will be laid over for possible inclusion or further consideration. All right, our third item on the agenda is Senate File 1380, Senator Mohamed. Senator Mohamed, to your bill.
Thank you, Chair Bolden and members of the committee. Thank you for considering Senate File 1380, which would appropriate $1.5 million in fiscal year 2024 and $1.5 in fiscal year 2025 for the Minnesota Housing Commissioner to provide a grant toward the Housing Development Fund to support the Home Ownership, Education, Counseling, and Training Program, HECA. The HECA Fund supports affordable and sustainable home ownership in Minnesota and serves as a primary tool for home ownership education, advising, economic well-being, and foreclosure prevention. It particularly addresses the racial home ownership gap by implementing the necessary measures to support the advancement of home ownership in communities of color. I have 2 testifiers here today, and I would be happy to answer questions after that.
Very good, thank you. We will begin with testimony. Julie Guggen, please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Chair Bolden and members of the committee, my name is Julie Guggen, and I'm the president of the nonprofit Minnesota Home Ownership Center. The center believes that owning a home is a foundation for personal success. For close to 30 years, we've worked to educate potential buyers on the complicated process of qualifying for a mortgage, affording down payment and closing costs, and transitioning to sustainable home ownership. We've carried out this work by partnering with more than 30 community-based organizations throughout the state, like 3 Rivers Community Action, Urban League Twin Cities, One Roof, Washington County HRA, and Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, and others, to offer unbiased homebuyer advisory services and our homestretch homeownership education curriculum. Because ownership is the main way that households in this country create wealth, we focus our work towards those that have traditionally been left out of the ownership space, households of color and lower income households. Last year, 60% of the households we served represented communities of color, and the median income of households served was just over $43,000. We supported over 5,000 participants last year. I think it's important to understand also that an important part of the HECAT program is centralized reporting and evaluation. My organization manages, in partnership with the Housing Finance Agency, a robust reporting mechanism that includes not just client-level data, but service delivery measures and monitoring to ensure that consumers are receiving high-quality services. HECAT funds the fundamental provision of homeownership classes, one-on-one advising, financial wellness coaching, foreclosure prevention, and reverse mortgage, all services designed to support successful homeownership throughout a household's homeownership tenure. HECAT is also instrumental in advancing approaches to education and counseling that are culturally competent, designed specifically for communities of color, and practices that include cohort models that build support among participants. Education that acknowledges historic trauma and racist practices that have deterred or prohibited ownership from BIPOC households, and outreach approaches specific for BIPOC communities. HECAT supports services in multiple languages, including Spanish, Somali, and Hmong. HECAT advances critical partnerships between community-based providers and lenders and real estate professionals. These industry partners volunteer at classes, collaborate with homeownership advisors to advance products that support BIPOC buyers. HECAT services open doors for buyers. Many down payment and first-time buyer products require HECAT-funded services. It is in this spirit that I'm here today to speak in support of Senate File 1380, as it would fund additional monies for homeownership assistance programs and allow this important work to be expanded and enhanced. Thank you to Senator Mohamed for her support of this bill. Thank you all for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions when the time is right.
Thank you, Ms. Guggen. Next, we'll hear from Pa Lor. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Bolden and members of the committee for having me here. My name is Pa Lor, and I'm the Homeowner Development Manager at Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. So I oversee our home buyer preparation programs and a team of homeownership advisors, and I also work directly with home buying clients on education and supporting them with things such as increasing credit scores, budgeting, savings, managing debt, and much more. Homeownership education and one-on-one counseling with dedicated professionals is such an invaluable resource for first-time and first-generation homebuyers. And I remember my own experience. It was very intimidating and daunting trying to soak in all that information, figuring out where to start and what I needed to do. My team has supported numerous clients, and I've seen not just the impact of homeownership education and counseling on their own success, but the ripple effects within the community. And it's very rewarding to know that a client you supported was able to successfully close on their first home, but even more rewarding to see the impact and knowledge sharing that happens that they impart among those in their networks, which we see a lot of in our program, a lot of word of mouth, and then clients coming in, sharing what other family members have kind of told them about the process, some of the education that is shared. And then I want to quickly share a story of a client who is now a homeowner. Bao was one of the very first home buying clients that I worked with in 2016. She had been working towards homeownership for a very long time. She told me it was like I was trying and trying, but I wasn't successful, and I kept trying, but not knowing what I needed to do. Working with you, learning about mortgage readiness, and all of this financial coaching has been like a light illuminating my way. I can now see where there are cracks and holes and what to avoid so that I'm not falling in and I can make it to the finish line. So that opportunity to connect Bao to homeownership education and counseling allowed her to understand this path and to see what she needed to do. And then when the pandemic hit and started 2 years ago, Bao lost her job. She reached out. She said, I've been doing all of this work. I'm now a homeowner. I don't want to lose my home. What do I do? And I see that as another value of this education. It's not just helping folks to get into homes, but it's also empowering them to be active agents in getting to homeownership, but making sure that they stay and they're successful as homeowners. And I just want to say that she's still a homeowner now, 4 years later, and through that pandemic situation that happened. So in conclusion, I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak on the value of homeownership education, counseling, and training. And I encourage you to support Senate File 1380 so more homebuyers will have access to this critical education to ensure their success so that they can build generational wealth for decades to come.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Lor. Senator Mohamed, any other remarks before we move to questions?
No, I think this is an important program, and most of you know this, but I often talk about being a renter, but having a desire to one day be a homeowner myself, and so I'm really excited that we're gonna have an opportunity to invest in this, and I thank my co-authors, Senator Umuver-Baton, Senator Vate, Senator Housley, and thank you, Senator Bolden, Chair Bolden.
Very good. Questions or discussion, members? Senator Pa.
So I used to be the director over at HAP, which is Hmong American Partnership, which had a HECAT grant to do homeownership education, counseling, training. So I've worked with this program for quite some time and have seen the impact that it makes on people's lives. been to the trainings and seen their training curriculum, which is very well done. So I just want to say how much I support the appropriation for this. Oftentimes, when people, especially BIPOC or BIPOC communities, is that they go to their local nonprofits that understand or can speak their language, understand their difficulties, are able to get counseling in order to be a homeowner. Some of that is a language barrier, so something like this funds helps with nonprofits to do some of this work. The other thing is that a lot of homeowners don't understand how credit works, and so the counseling when it comes to the credit part really makes a huge difference in the ability to be a homeowner. So I just want to say that this work is very much needed. The funding is very much needed for this type of program. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you.
Any other questions or remarks, members? All right, seeing none, this bill will be laid over for further consideration. And members, just looking ahead to next week, we will meet on Tuesday and Thursday next week. Notices for that will go out later this afternoon. And being at the end of our agenda and seeing no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned.